Hey y'all, Fred here. Thanks for joining me today. We are going to continue with some of our knife cut tests. I'm still in the process of cutting known knives that we know have good steel on them, so we can get kind of a baseline comparison to compare some of the other replica knives and less expensive knives that we are buying occasionally here on the channel. Today we're going to be looking at this Petrified Fish Beluga. This is actually one of my favorite large full-size knives. I love the blue jean micarta handles. That really just speaks to me. Very simple but elegant design aesthetics. I love the big sweeping belly on this blade. The Beluga here is a K110 steel, which is the German equivalent of D2 steel. You can see in terms of edge retention, which is really what we're testing the most of in these tests, has really good, some of the best edge retention of probably just about any knife that we're likely to be testing, with maybe the exception of some M390, I guess. It's way better edge retention than even Nitro-V, 14C28N, better than the 𝗕𝗲𝗀𝗏, 9CRs, maybe not quite as good as the AR-RPM9. Jury's still out on that. It probably is going to come in roughly equivalent, but again, better than VG10, better than 440C. So I expect good things in terms of edge retention out of this knife. We're going to dive in and take the test. By the way, I also want to mention that I am keeping track of these scores. So again, if you haven't seen my videos before, this is not in any way intended to be some kind of professional edge retention test. You are at the wrong place if that's what you're looking for. There are other channels that do a far better job of that. Go look at Knife Steel Nerds, or even Cedric and Ada do better jobs of testing the steels. There's actually several great channels that do a little bit more of an objective test. This is subjective. I don't end up cutting the exact same amount of materials. This is just for me to test out the blades and see how well are they hanging compared to some of the other blades that I own. But I do think it makes sense that I need to keep track of how each of these blades have performed. So I'm going to use this little chart here, and as we go along with each of our different tests, I'm going to add my data. Again, totally subjective. You can see my redneck sharpness ratings down here. Little bit different than probably most people might have it. You can certainly come up with your own tests or own ratings and decide for yourself what you think these knives should rate. This is for me. These are my knives, and I just want to see how my other knives compare to these knives. So if you're looking for more than that, maybe you're going to be a little disappointed here. All right, with that said, let's dive in and take a look and see how the tests came out for this beautiful Petrified Fish Beluga. All right, so as usual, the first thing I want to do when we're getting started with our cut test here is see how it cuts paper, kind of what is the starting condition. And this knife started incredibly sharp. I was really torn whether or not to rate this a 9 or a 10. 10 being like laser beam. There's not going to be many knives that I'm going to test that I'm going to rate a 10, and I probably should have given this one a 10, because out of all the knives that I've gotten, and you know, right out of the box, just tested, this thing came really sharp. It's got that very tall, flat, slicey grind on it, which leads it to be just a very sharp, thin behind the edge kind of blade. And so you can see here, starting off pretty well on the cardboard. It's kind of hot knife through butter action. I'll speed it up here in just a minute, but want to give you a chance to see what this thing can do at normal speed. I actually tested a heck of a lot more cardboard than really the first two tests that we did. We cut, in terms of just kind of total square inches, a lot more cardboard with this knife than we did with any of the other knives. But again, you know, being a D2 steel, we're expecting a whole lot more out of this blade, out of this steel, than we did on the others. And even at high speed here, you can see this thing is just tearing through, and it's also partly technique. I finally am starting to figure out how to have a good technique with good long, even kind of cutting strokes. But again, this tall, thin, slicey grind, man, this thing is just tearing up that cardboard, and it stayed really sharp. I mean, from start to finish throughout this whole bit of cardboard. I think we were at like 375 square inches. I don't know how else to do that in these tests other than just try to measure the total square inches of cardboard cut. There's nothing going to be scientific. Some are thin strips, some are thick strips. You get the message there. So let's go back and see if we did any damage to this D2 steel. You can see there's something right at the bottom edge of the blade that hangs just a little bit, but man, you can see this for yourself. I'm cutting long and slow right there. There's a little hang up right about the middle somewhere, but even nice long slow strokes with this thing. It has pleasantly surprised me as to how well that edge held up. So now we've got this thick, I don't know, inch and a half, something like that, disposal rubber hose reinforced with nylon thread all through the middle of it. Again, just trying to pick out different potential things that you might cut with your knife during, you know, anybody's given kind of work day or even home life. Maybe you're installing a new washing machine. So just cutting 3 little donuts out of the end of it, but then I want to just really chop up more things. One, it's kind of fun with this big fat belly bladed knife. You can just easily roll right through those cuts. You can see it's nothing at all just to slice through those chunks. And I'm just trying to do a little bit more edge damage to the knife just to try to wear down that edge a little bit more, wondering if, you know, something thick and gooey like rubber will do it. So again, there's something right there towards the bottom of the blade that there must be a little micro nick, but you can see the front basic half of that all the way through that belly is still extremely sharp, cutting really well, slow cut. So now we'll go into the 3/8 inch Sisal rope. I looked it up and had Webster's Dictionary tell me how to pronounce it. It is pronounced Sisal. Sisal. I think I even spelled it wrong in the last 2 videos. So I'm obviously expecting a little more here. It doesn't look like it's getting off to a great start, but that's a technique thing. So you'll see right here, look how cleanly this rope now just breaks. So it's a great bitey kind of edge. I think I just made that word up. Is bitey a word? It bites well into that rope. Just need to give it a little bit of force and use the belly of that blade. That was, you know, cutter error right here. You can see this is just me totally screwing it up. But if I hold my head just right, you can see this thing cuts through that Sisal rope nice and clean. So we're going to do 10 cuts on the Sisal rope. See how that, you know, this is a bit of an edge killer, particularly for softer steels. But look, some of those, it just pops right off the edge of that rope. So going strong, definitely outperforming the last 2 knives I tested, which were the 𝗬𝗲𝘃 Vision and the 𝗕𝗲𝗏𝗏𝗡𝗏, which is a bit disappointing because I really like those 2 knives. But, you know, the 2 steels that those have are not D2. They just don't hold an edge like D2. There really is some truth to that. All right, back to our paper here. You can see, apart from one, that's kind of a cutter error there, but still long, slow strokes all the way out to the tip of that blade. Really surprisingly well. So this isn't so much a cutting test as it is an ergonomics test. I'll wise up in about 10 or 15 seconds here and realize probably shouldn't be cutting this with the glove on, because kind of the real point of this test is about the ergonomics. How does it feel when you're having to bear down into that knife, cutting hard materials like wood? You can see I'm looking at the back of my hand there. I'm starting to feel the squareness of the edge of the knife right here, gripping into my hand a little bit. Just speeding the video up so you don't have to watch some dumb guy cutting sticks on a video for very long. But, you know, I'm trying to give it a real genuine test, really bearing down on the knife. What's a good grip to have? How does it feel? How does a pocket clip feel? Pocket clip on this actually was pretty good. That wasn't bothering me at all. The only thing that really bothered me is this top edge of the knife right there. It's squared off. It feels the hand really nice. That micarta feels great in the hand. But when you're really bearing down on that top edge right there, that's where you'll feel it just a little bit. Is it unbearable? No, not at all. Still feels very good in the hand. Fills the hand nicely. But, you know, it's a rather squared off top edge, and so there you go. You're going to feel that just a little bit, you know, depending on how tough your hands are and how much you're using a knife like that all day long. I'm an office warrior. So again, back to the paper cut test, and you can see I'm trying to use long, slow, smooth strokes all the way through the entire edge of the blade, and it is cutting beautifully still. Very pleasantly surprised at how great of a job this K110 or D2 steel has held up. I guess maybe I should not have been so shocked about it. That only makes sense. Certainly the ratings and the experts obviously are clear that the D2 is definitely going to hold an edge better and longer. At this point, this is just cutter error. It's just some idiot with a knife who doesn't know how to cut paper anymore. So I'm trying to figure out, is it me? Is it the knife? It just cut beautifully for a minute. And I think there are maybe a couple of little micro nicks towards the bottom end of the blade. But then as you get from about the midpoint all the way out to the tip, it's still smooth, which is shocking because really, you know, it's towards the tip end, the belly, that took all the abuse from cutting the hose and cutting the rope, etc. So as always, at the end of these videos, I want to strop it back and see how much I can get my edge back after just a normal stropping. There's nothing fancy here. This is a cheap, I think this is from Temu, the strop that I got. Just one of those double-sided leather strops. I'm using the smooth side leather, kind of that finished polish side with some green stropping compound that I think actually came with the strop. So nothing fancy, you know, like all the professional knife sharpening guys use. This is Redneck City. I thought, well, at least I'll use a strop. I think I do like 3 strokes on each side, and then about 15 to 20 maximum on each side, alternating strokes thereafter. I promise you, next time I show this, I will speed up the stropping part of the video so you don't have to watch this excellent technique. But since you did and we're here, let's see how well it came back. And look at that. It's hard to say because it was still cutting really good before, but this is just clean as butter again. I would say this got back to at least an 8 on the Redneck chart, if not maybe back to even a 9. But I hate to give it a 9 after putting it through the abuse. We know it took a little bit of abuse. Smooth action, one of the reasons I love this knife. Fits the hand, feels good, and clearly holds an edge. So how does it rate on the overall chart here? You can see I've filled in the blanks down the right hand side. I think it started at a 9 or a 10. I probably should have given it a 10 because out of all the knives I have, it's definitely started at one of the sharpest. After we cut the cardboard, we still only maybe took it down to an 8, which is great, almost minimal damage there. After the hose, maybe it went to a 7. And again, the front half of that blade, I'd say, was easily an 8. After the rope, still a 7. After the wood, I gave it a 5, but that's not really fair. If you watch the first few cuts, it probably still at least a 6 or 7 after the wood. Just depends on what part of the blade. But it clearly took a little hit in the sharpness, but not much. Certainly very little compared to the other knives we've tested here. Stropped it back beautifully. It's at least a 7 or 8 now after stropping it. I was just trying to be conservative and not say, oh, look, it stropped all the way back to an 8, but probably it really did. Doesn't matter. These numbers are for me anyhow. There's clearly not much professional about this test. Anyhow, thanks so much for watching. We're going to keep on going with these. Let me know if you have any suggestions. Give me some feedback down in the comments. Hit that like, subscribe, notification, all that fun stuff. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next video. Thanks, and have a great day.